So, given that we have a full house in here, I don't think it makes any sense to wait a couple more minutes for others to trickle in. So why don't we go ahead and get started. So hopefully you're here for the reporting of the CMO translating marketing analytics to visualization session. If you're not, I'm sure your seat is very envied by those in the back. All right, so let's go ahead and proceed forward. So how I'm going to go about this is I'm first going to provide you some context to who this character is in front of you. How did I arrive here to speak with you today? A little bit about my story and how it relates to this topic. Then I'll get into the nuts and bolts of going about framing an analytics problem within your organization, why that can be challenging in earning the confidence of stakeholders to support some sort of research-oriented or analytic-oriented project. Then, of course, the ultimate, telling a story with data. I can't tell you how many times, both in my career and now as I teach others in a university back in Washington, D.C., those who are technically gifted with math and analytics, you put them in a room in front of people like you, whether marketing or any other business industry, and they just melt right before your eyes. Or they talk to you in technical mumbo-jumbo and don't really think about your downstream business use case, and ultimately all their hard work and effort goes nowhere because you don't understand what they're saying. If you don't have the confidence in what there is that they're delivering to you, it's never going to change a decision you're going to make downstream. And then lastly, get into a topic of some of the opportunistic enablement, analytically speaking, when it comes to the marketing lens. At any point, you don't have to wait till the end. Feel free to interrupt me. It's not going to hurt my feelings. This time is for you. Ask questions. Let's be interactive. So let's do this. All right, first and foremost, who the heck is this guy? So my career started actually as a graphic designer on the creative side of marketing. I could have cared less about analytics and data. That was many years ago, but I was working at a brand called Navy Federal in Vienna, Virginia. You may see their commercials on Monday Night Football and things like that. And I started becoming somewhat uncomfortable with the notion of I was getting instructions from senior leaders about, you know, we're going to run an A/B test, and I want you to put the baby in 50% of the direct mailer, and the other 50% is going to be a puppy. And I see some familiar faces from yesterday, so you heard this story yesterday. But point is, I could never explain why one creative experience worked better than the other when we read the results of the campaign. I could just tell you that one outperformed the other. I had no idea if we were leaving opportunity on the table. But most importantly, when that senior executive said, "Why is it you do what you do?" I had no idea what to say to that person. So I went to this university where now I teach at, but got an MBA. I'm not a statistician. I'm not a data scientist. But I got an MBA, and this particular professor changed my life and introduced me to data mining and analytics in general from the predictive perspective. First lecture I ever got, RFM analysis. Took what I learned, used that type of analysis at a campaign at Navy Federal, got promoted. One lecture. I lie to you not. This man, what he taught me in one semester, I received 4 promotions in 8 months at that brand, which is unheard of. Not to brag to you about, but just about how I became enabled with something that informed marketing to do something different, and those results, or those incremental success results, were attributed back to my desk. And that was empowering. I've been addicted ever since. So I graduated with my mascot, the hippo, and then I took a job at the height of the financial recession in New York City at this brand. Going to New York! Oh my gosh. Terrible experience. But sorry for anyone who might work for this brand. It wasn't a good year to be there. I was working in their credit card division. And their credit card division, if you spun it off on its own outside of the corporate umbrella, is a Fortune 50 company in itself. Lots of money and lots of brain power dedicated to those direct marketing envelopes trying to get you to get the next credit card from them. So I got my chops, in direct marketing analytics. I was part of a team of 12. That team wasn't a statistical analysis team. It was called the Strategic Process Management Group. And our role as 12 was to interact with all these other departments and groups across different products and try to enable best practices in their day-to-day work. So essentially, we were like internal consultants. And my role was to be more of that analytically minded marketer. Are they using best practice in analytics in their workflow before we approve whatever it is they're going to do? That team in 2007 shrunk from 12 to 2. There was only one peer of mine that actually had technical analytical skills with me. Everyone else had different forms of expertise. Guess who were the 2 that got left? All of a sudden now I started realizing we're not as common of a breed as I once thought. Those who can both speak the language of marketing as well as have some analytical chops. I can see by those of you in the room you're interested in this as well. So my last impression before I got out of there was that. And amazingly, sometime in 2008, I was able to get a job when most people were getting fired. Why? I can solely attribute it to the fact that I had marketing analytic chops. But these guys wanted me to start applying my predictive skills in the digital marketing realm. And this is where I started meeting that intersection of digital marketing and predictive analytics. And so at the same time, I said to myself, well, I'm working with these web analytic guys in my department. I'm trying to build predictive models, but the one requirement I have is I need to be able to get to the data. I need to touch it, I need to reshape it, and I need to feed it into my modeling activity and analysis. And I go talking to my web trends guy, I'm talking to my Google Analytics guy, or my Adobe Analytics guy at the time. Now, I know things have changed now, but this is like 7 years ago. I'm like, how do I get to the raw data? How do I get to that web analytic clickstream? They're like, what are you talking about? I just play with this interface and I run reports and I don't even know what you're talking about, raw data. It was a total game-changing moment for me, realizing that I couldn't even get to this very valuable source of information, yet the business was asking me to build predictive analytic marketing models for the purposes of online conversion events. If I don't have the most important ingredient, which is those of you that are clicking away on your tablets right now and creating data for me to analyze, how am I going to make an accurate model? This is where I learned about some of the things in digital marketing at the time were analytically immature. But NYU at the time was offering this graduate program in digital marketing or integrated marketing with a focus in digital analytics. I said, you know what? I'm going to complement what I did in my MBA. Go study there. Another professor blew my mind, changed me, and basically said, you know what? You now understand the disciplines of analytics. You understand the disciplines of digital marketing. I want you to start teaching in this program. You don't realize that there are not many people like you. I didn't really believe her, but I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And then how many of you have heard of this brand? Good number of you. If you like to work for an organization that is consistently ranked by Fortune as a top 10 place to work in the United States, as well as in most countries in the world, give us a call. It's a great place to work. Hard to get a job there. They found me on LinkedIn. They called me. I was at Bryant Park at 6th Avenue and 42nd Street in Manhattan. This, for me, was my Google calling me or Apple calling me moment, because I was a geek about what they do. And what's been amazing about that run is now I get this platform to talk with folks like you and other conferences and academic institutions where I try to preach about championing analytics and marketing processes. But the only way I get better at what I do is by improving my communication skills of taking the very technical and making it look valuable and interpretable. It's not black box, it's not scary, it's not intimidating. My learnings across my career have been, you can be as technically gifted and skilled as possible. If you can't speak in plain English or speak the language of business and marketing and have that domain expertise, you're not going to go very far. Because there's more of us who are not technical, but have strategy and decision-making authority and vision and creativity. And if I can fuel you and make you even more valuable, then we make an awesome team. So that's what this whole presentation is about. So before I start, I kind of like these comics. This one's kind of interesting. If you haven't read it, I'll just read it out real quick because I know some of you are in the back of the room. Guy's saying, you need a dashboard application to track your key metrics. That way you'll have more, and then the analyst goes, that way you'll have more data to ignore when you make your decisions based on corporate politics. You're laughing because you've been there. Senior executive goes, will the data be accurate? Analyst says, okay, let's pretend that matters. This is a problem. All right, so that's my little comical anecdote. This was a recent release. I don't know if you may follow this new content publication series from Google called Think with Google. Some of them are quite interesting. They had this one called Staffing Your Marketing Measurement Team, Why You Need Data Storytellers. Think about it. As we're thinking about orchestrating experiences for our target consumers, you're being creative, you're being visionary. If I'm going to come and start talking about some data analysis, if I start talking to you about R-square scores or the coefficients and multicollinearity and all these technical mumbo-jumbo things about modeling analysis that you don't care about, we're not going to go very far in that meeting. And I used to do that earlier in my career and get laughed out of rooms. But if I tell you a story and I let you pull me in for the level of technical depth that you want and granularity, and I let you drive, now we've got something. Now we're singing together. Because I'm telling you a story, try to make it entertaining, try to make it insightful, and hopefully you feel confident in whatever it is I'm delivering that might influence you to make a slightly different decision, ultimately driving better business results. You guys have access to these slides, by the way, on the webpage link for this event. So if you want the slides, you can get to the links behind these stories. A more technical mind, more commonly seen at analytic-oriented conferences and academic conferences, Tom Davenport. If you're not aware of him, check him out as well. He really speaks the story of analytics to the business community and tries to keep it at a business and executive level. This is the guy that most CMOs, CIOs are reading and following. So you want to know what they're thinking about? Read what he's writing and target that altitude. But he's talking about the same thing about telling a story with data. He's just talking from the technical analyst mind about how important it is to talk in plain English and not try to act like the smarter person in the room. Don't be the smarter person in the room if you're the analyst. Always let the executive be the smarter person in the room. All right, before I dive in, why are you here? These are just a sampling of headlines in the press in 2015 and 2014. How many of you guys are tired of reading about the potential of analytics and marketing? Exactly. Well, good. Not many of you, actually. Point is, it's hit a critical a very high threshold of there's all this potential. Everyone's all about it. Why now? Well, we're in a moment in time where technology and how we process through very large volumes of information, we can actually do this. It's not just hocus pocus. So given my background, started as a graphic designer on the creative side, then went on the technical and quantitative side of marketing, I really believe in this quote, where it's this idea that every time I go and consult at an organization on behalf of SaaS, I find I've got creative marketers and very quantitative marketers, they don't speak the same language. They have a hard time synergizing with one another and working together to add value to each of their causes. But that is ultimately what the C-suite is looking down at and saying, by having these two groups start working together, now you become this greater force as a team. And so I think that's opportunistic about pushing marketing forward. I heard a keynote after lunch, and I don't want to say I disagreed with the guy, but it was a little hard for me where he said, I like to shoot from the gut and data or whatever, just do it. I think there's a happy balance. I agreed with some of that sentiment, but I do believe using data-driven insights within the window of opportunity to execute on a marketing workflow, that's the kind of approach that I try to champion. I try to stay away from shooting from the gut. All right, those of you that are in here that work for my company are probably like, why is he showing a competitor slide? Because these guys, I was at their annual conference earlier in the year, and they had a slide that I think really breaks down what's going on in marketing right now. So what you see here is a blank palette, and across the horizontal or x-axis, you have low sophistication to high sophistication. And across the vertical or y-axis, you have number of companies. Across the top, you have basically an analytic maturity curve. We've got descriptive analytics and diagnostic, which is basically reporting in BI, summarizing the past. Then you've got things like predictive and prescriptive, right? Predictive is more forward-looking, and prescriptive is like, okay, Sunil's the analyst, and let's say Mark is my marketer who's going to deliver on that campaign. I need to give him a prescription of a propensity score or some sort of data-driven segment so that I can make his process work better, right? That's the prescription I'm giving him. Ultimately, what Adobe was talking about was the executive suite is getting a little bit frustrated about marketing spending too much time over here on the left and trying to get over here to the right to drive better results. Makes sense. You're all in this room for a reason. Here's the problem. Not that many guys or girls who fit this profile of the mythical data scientist. You've got a moderate number of talent when it comes to marketing analysts or business analysts. And I'll talk a little bit more about this concept shortly. But there's more of those type of folks around. And then we've got a ton of people that claim they're marketers. Some of them are excellent, some of them are average, some of them are below average. There's a lot of people that claim they're marketers. There's a wide spectrum of them. So he said, you know what? I'm going to just do a Google query a couple nights ago and write data scientist for marketing. what's going to come up in the images. I was curious when I do something like that. And this guy came up. It's like the quintessential fall guy, if you read The Onion. And it's called The Modern Data Scientist. And I know it's hard to read, but I'll read it for you. So he's got a specialty number of skills in math and statistics. I've been in a marketing program before. You don't take that many math and statistics classes. So basically, this guy came from somewhere else. Then he's got a number of skills in programming and database querying. Then he's got a number of skills in communication and visualization, tapping into a different part of the brain. And then, of course, in the case of marketing, marketing domain knowledge and softer skills that are more related to marketing strategy. How long has this guy been in school? Like his whole life. And now he's coming out with 0 job experience. This is what I think of this. This one person doesn't exist. My opinion on this whole concept, if it's a marketing-oriented data scientist or someone who's very sophisticated with marketing analytics, is you're probably going to find them within a small group or a team who can complement one another, right? A lot of times you may have 2 or 3 analysts that are quite technical, but you may have an immediate leader above them, a manager, who has excellent communication skills that can understand what they're doing and coach them to do the right forms of analysis, but he or she is the front-facing voice of that team. This obsession of trying to find one person to do everything makes no sense to me. All right, so is framing an analytics problem hard? So now I'm starting to talk about maybe one of you made the horrible decision and hired me within your organization. And now I come say, I've been taking some time to digest what it is your team or your department or your organization does, and now I want to start pitching ideas to do research for you guys to start to improve upon some of these processes where I think there's opportunity. So if I come talking to you, and if you've done any reading about analytics, you've probably heard terms like machine learning, artificial intelligence, data mining, data science, statistical analysis, pattern recognition. Are these different things or are these the same thing? Are these new topics? So this graphic comes from, my company has an education division. So if some of you have SaaS technology at your organization, you always have the option to come and get some training from us, get better at it. This graphic comes from a tutorial slide from 1998. There is nothing new about the terms machine learning or data science or data mining. There's nothing new. These terms have been around forever. It's just that more people are paying attention to these spaces, and these terms originated from different industries: computer science, engineering, statistics, business, etc. There's a significant amount of overlap, a little bit of difference, but a significant amount of overlap. But should I come into your firm as a new employee pitching things about, artificial intelligence? Is that going to work? Some of you are giving me the straight up no way. So there's a research firm. Some of you may know Forrester. They're based here in Cambridge. I'm not sure if Gartner's in the area or in a different location, but they're similar in what they do, providing research for the business industries to understand what's going on in the technology space as well as trends in marketing, for example. In this case, they were doing research on the emergence of the citizen data scientist. So who the heck is this person? Basically, this is the marketing analyst. So if you go back to that Adobe slide I was just showing, there's a moderate amount of business or marketing analysts available in the market, much more so than the mythical data scientists. These people are essentially saying they have domain expertise, right? They can speak the language of marketing. They have years of experience. And now a lot of the analytic technology companies and vendors are trying to make analytics more approachable. And I'll talk about this concept a little bit more in a couple minutes. But the point is, more approachable means shorter learning curve and enabling a broader audience of people to use these types of approaches. So essentially, they're power users who will be able to perform simple to moderate but sophisticated analytical applications that previously would have required more expertise. But they have the deep domain expertise that makes them maybe even more valuable. Let's put it into a graphic. Got your marketing analyst on the left. This person spends a lot of time doing reporting, dashboarding, and data reshaping for those reporting purposes. That person typically, maybe some of you have a different view in your organization, but most part, they don't spend much time in the more advanced exploratory analytics and predictive. Those are left for the statisticians, data miners, data scientists, and there's probably less of those folks. But where's the value? You all are here for a reason. There's a lot of hype about predictive analytics because there are proven case studies, one after another, where we see value. So this concept of sit and data scientists, where you have motivated marketing analysts who want to learn more on the job, and now they're being enabled to do more interesting analysis. To do what? To drive value. But they have domain expertise, which a lot of the data scientists, given the quintessential fall guy I was showing you before, may have very little. Gartner predicts by 2017, this citizen data science segment will grow 5x in compared to the data scientist segment. Okay, let's talk about framing an analytics problem. This is taken out of a book called Keeping Up with the Quants. It's written by that thought leader Tom Davenport that I mentioned on an earlier slide. He's got a graphic in there about the different stages of quantitative analysis. I don't want to focus on modeling, data collection, data analysis. That's not why we're here. I want to focus on framing the problem and communicating, acting on the results. So let's first talk about how do I approach you to get sponsorship or approval to actually do something, right? Get you guys excited within your organization to support some sort of interesting analysis. I love this guy. Hopefully some of you do. Some of you might find him to be the most annoying person in the world. This was an episode on The Big Bang Theory where he was trying to map out through a decision tree his friendship with someone on the show. But he was whiteboarding it, and it's a beautiful way of communicating the problem and the current state of where your team or organization's at with that problem, and then talking about future vision. Whiteboarding is such an essential tool. The DMA wouldn't get me a whiteboard, otherwise I'd be whiteboarding for you right now. But it's such an essential tool when I go and consult with clients, could be some of you in the room, and you're telling me ideas about what your problems are, and then I start giving you responses based on my experiences how I might approach that. But putting that on a visual board allows you to revisit the thoughts that are being shared, because guess what? Probably 80 to 90% of what I say in this room over the next 40 minutes, or probably 30 now, most of you are going to forget. There are only very few things you're going to remember. And it's probably going to be some of the visual elements of what I share on the screen. So it also, if you were to start asking me questions in that meeting, allows me to be dynamic. As a consultant and I go meet with clients, I don't know where you guys are at on the analytic sophistication curve. But being on a whiteboard, I have a blank canvas to be flexible and dynamic in how I communicate with you. When I used to meet with executives, I have no idea going from executive to executive what they did in their backgrounds and their careers or how much they remember from their Stat 101 class. But having a blank canvas, I can always reframe that or remix that to whatever personality I'm dealing with. And this works for both business and strategic leadership as well as technical leadership because of that flexibility. And there's something about drawing on a canvas that if you're presenting and you're creating what turns out to be a very attractive framework of whatever problem you're approaching and trying to gain sponsorship for, it gives you credibility. You're confident. All right, so let's talk about telling a story. So I'm switching from the framing of the problem to communicating and acting on the results. But before I leave the framing of the problem, getting sponsorship to do something different from an analytics perspective in marketing can make or break that project. If you don't have a strong sponsor who believes in what you're about to do, we'll never get here. So I digress. We move forward. So I spent a lot of time in my MBA program in statistical modeling and decision science classes. All my MBA peers who were focusing on marketing strategy or marketing communications or something like that looked at me like I was crazy. This was like 2006, 2007. But I was like this woman. I was fascinated with all this statistical Greek, not because I wanted to learn this alternative language, because I knew after that first lecture and using RFM analysis on my job, there was something to this. I was all about application. It was hard to deal with the theory of the classroom, but I was always interested in how do I apply this to address what? A marketing problem. At the end of this session, I'll show you a presentation where I apply various forms of analytics to digital media mix or digital marketing attribution. Common marketing problem, but how do I take analytics to address that? So the interpretation of this, but the other critical skill, it cannot look like that to the rest of you. I've got to make it look approachable. I got to make it look easy. I have to answer your questions without intimidating anyone in the room. So the ability to, there will always be someone in the room who's quite bright and try to throw a curveball at you. Ask a really technical question. Stay focused on the most senior person in the room and what they're there for. Maybe address a couple of those just to earn credibility. But just stay focused on making sure that the most senior person doesn't focus on the left. Whatever you're sharing looks more like the right. So that's a very visual picture, right? So I'll talk about visualization in a moment, but this is another key consideration. How many of you, before you do a presentation, think about the people who are going to be in that room before you walk in? So just curious, one or two who are brave. What do you do in preparation?
Analysis.
Of the people that are going to be in the room? So what do you mean by analysis?
Actually, I mean to find out what is the level of their skills about the subject I'm going to talk about.
Very good. Anyone else want to add to that?
What questions are they
You want a preview of the questions they might ask you? You had your hand up in the back?
That was a second comment. Our team meets together. We anticipate what our executive team is going to ask us to each of the business units.
We spend a lot of time before we get into a client meeting to understand who are the people going to be in the room, what are their career experiences, if I can't directly get a chance to sit down with someone to set expectations for the meeting, trying to talk to people that are on their team that can give me some sort of clue as to the personality types. Because whether you are a marketer or a marketing analyst within an organization presenting up the food chain, or you're in a consultative role like I am going into different clients, this consideration applies to both. How you're going to scale that conversation, level of granularity, your whole approach and design is going to shift from the executive down to, are you talking to a VP, director, manager, to someone in IT versus someone who's on the analytical side of marketing versus the creative side of marketing. It means everything. So if you don't do this, take some time to prepare for that. It makes the difference between an average to an excellent delivery in your presentation. All right. I promise you I'll talk about data visualization. So there was this statistician back in the day in 1977. I was born that year. And he made this quote. The greatest value of a picture is when it forces us to notice what we never expected to see. How many of you use data visualization in your day-to-day work today or have team members who use it in presentations of some sort? It can be in Excel, it can be in Tableau, it can be in anything. I don't care. A lot of you raising your hands. Why? Why is data visualization picking up steam? Why is it popular? I'm looking to someone to respond to that. It's easier to understand. What'd you say? It's more powerful? Why is it more powerful? You can tell a story with it? You know where my head's at, so. If I can tell a story with a picture, I strongly am confident that most of you will get it. If I show you rows and columns, it could be a pivot table or it could just be data, a lot of you are going to start checking out right away. There's just cognitively how we're built as human beings, data visualization has proven to be a more effective way of communicating with data. Now I want to tell you a story, and for those of you that were in my workshop yesterday, I apologize. There's like 20% overlap in this presentation from what you saw yesterday. So what I have on the left are just snapshots. This is Tableau, and this is Google Analytics, right? Because a lot of web analytics software is very visually driven. So I think of that as creative visualization. What they don't have is really hardcore predictive analytic capabilities. They might have a little, but not anything too crazy. Over here, a lot of you, when you think of data science or predictive analytics, you think of crazy algorithms and statistical Greek and maybe even some sort of programmatic interface that requires some sort of coding skills. So I told you analytics is a topic that, the approachability is something that's been trending over the last few years. So creative visualization, advanced analytics, they met one night, they went out on a date. They're sitting on top of a hill looking at the cityscape, opened a bottle of wine, conversation's flowing, things are good. Second bottle gets popped open. 9 months later, something happens. Visual analytics is born. Not a product, but just a space within the analytic spectrum. Combining these two forces into one. It covers the gambit of being able to do visual dashboarding and reporting and summarizing the past, as well as enabling you to do predictive and prescriptive analytics in a approachable UI that, if those of you have played with a Google or Adobe Analytic or a Tableau or something like that, that kind of learning curve where it's point and click and not too intimidating, if you will. It also has the ability, I told you, we're living in a modern era of data analysis that we can scale to very large amounts of information. So as you marketers think about very creative ideas of this new data sources you want to bring in, whether it's social or clickstream or some sort of wearable device that falls under the IoT application, we can scale. So let's switch topics and go into analytically empowering marketing. So what I'm going to fall into now, and what's my time check right here? Okay, beautiful, perfect. I'm going to do a demonstration for you guys. Again, I work for a software vendor, so I have access to my software vendor's technology. I don't want you to look at it as a product demo. I want you to focus on how I communicate a presentation to you. There are many options in the market for visual analytics, right? So this is just one example. But I want to role play and play the role of a predictive marketer. Who is a predictive marketer? It could be one of the business analysts in your organization. It could be someone who's more of a sophisticated data miner. But they have some domain expertise as well to combine with those technical skills. And ultimately, what I'm focusing on is translating insights so that hopefully the majority of you can follow what I'm about to do. Otherwise, I've failed. And ultimately, some of you may feel a little bit motivated. And the concept is you want to motivate stakeholders who are interested in what it is you're presenting to champion now and represent that across the organization and more senior executives. All right, so let me jump to... And so what you're going to see as I go through this, you're going to watch examples where you're going to see elements of advanced analytics like forecasting, data mining, or if you want to use the term machine learning, you can, optimization, visualization. You're going to see it all. But again, I'm not going to deliver something where I talk about that very deeply. I'm going to be more focused on the business problem. So what's the business problem? Business problem is, how do I allocate digital media spend to drive more traffic? It could be your website, but some sort of digital property, right? How many of you participate in pumping some sort of ad dollars across digital marketing channels? Show of hands. Good, it's an applicable situation, right? Some of you might use rules-based attribution methods to drive the strategy behind future allocation. Some of you might use last click or first click or equally weighted or time decay or some linear decay method. Let's think about this in more of an algorithmic sense. So we want to identify our most important acquisition channels because we have some sort of goal for the future time period of how much traffic we want to bring in, whether that's for an advertising goal, you've got new campaigns, you want more eyeballs on those campaigns, whatever your marketing goal is. But ultimately, we want to simulate and optimize how much ad spend we want to pump into each of those important channels to optimize the acquisition of incremental traffic. All right, so just need to change one thing and we can get started. You guys can't see the screen. Adjust my screen resolution. And you should be able to see it now. Yes, and then let me open this puppy up. Okay, so the premise is, again, you've made the bad decision to hire me. I did a whiteboarding session, presented a concept, and that hiring leader said, you know what, okay, go spend some time working on that. And now I'm coming in to give you my first iteration of what I did. So, what are we looking at here? Hopefully that looks okay. We're basically looking at website visitation to your website across a 2-month time period, historically speaking. And so with visualization, you see the spikes and the dips. It's a time series line chart, nothing impressive, right? And so the first question, the hiring leader, or let's just say it's, there's a senior leader and my hiring manager in the room, and says, okay, show me what traffic's going to look like in the next 2 weeks. And I say, sure. And this is what I mean by approachability. I just clicked a button, and what happened in that tool was 6 different pieces of forecasting math or algorithms were just thrown at that data, and the one that was most accurate in fitting it, or giving you the most accurate prediction, was selected in a few milliseconds. But I just clicked a button. I'm glad to know it's got my back. So senior leader says, how long of a prediction is that? And I say 6 days. He says, I want 2 weeks. I say, okay, no problem. I changed it to 2 weeks. So right away, that business leader could change their mind and say, no, I want to do 3 weeks, or I want to do a week. We can be interactive, and I can invite that business leader without getting technical to participate in this with me in the moment. All right, so we got a 2-week prediction, but all we're looking at are visitors to our site and a count of them, and just a simple prediction on what visitation in the future is going to look like now. If you guys struggle, let's say you get a question from someone, what's that blue shading? The technical mumbo jumbo will be you start talking about the confidence interval and the 95% and the upper and lower 95% CI. I just say it's your best or worst case scenario by date. There's going to be a little bit of variability because it's a prediction. And we want that shading to be as skinny as possible. So business leader says, okay, make it skinnier. How do you do that? Because I want a tighter prediction. I say, well, we have to add more information so we can learn. So we're doing an analysis about digital marketing channels, so why don't we add that in? So rather than after writing a bunch of code, I'm just going to go and select a bunch of marketing channels relevant to digital media. So we've got display, we've got paid search, you may have social display. I've got all the different marketing channels that can be attributed to for visitors that come to your website. Okay, so let's add it into the analysis. I just drop it into the working palette, and it runs, and it updates. So business leader says, what the heck just happened? Why is there 3 line charts now? Take it easy. The upper chart represents our website visitation, including that 2-week prediction of what visitation will look like in the future. What's beautiful about what just happened was the analysis identified that 2 of the 7 marketing channels that we fed in actually have importance with respect to that 2-week prediction. The other 5 aren't as important, so we should focus our attention on paid and organic search. Fantastic, and that's what the second and third visualization represent, the distribution of traffic specifically coming from those 2 channels. So a business leader says, you know what? So what can we do with this? And I say, well, you've got one marketing channel here that's advertising centric, paid search. I can't pump ad dollars into organic search, but I can into paid search. And so maybe we want to see if we could play with some levers here or some different ad budgets, and can we get more incremental traffic for this 2-week time period? Business leader says, all right, let's run through some scenarios. I say, okay, what's your first scenario? Again, inviting the business leader to participate with me. Business leader says, let's run a scenario where we increase paid search's impact or budget by 50%. Let's see what happens. I say, okay. I just right-click on the line that represents paid search, and I put in the 50% incremental adjustment. Visualization shows that lift in the paid search distribution, and I hit apply. And what happens is now my upper visualization, which is overall website traffic, there's a lot of things that just popped up. There's 2 values that key in on to the business leader. One is there is an estimation of what traffic volumes would look like without that lift, and then a second value with that lift. And we can compare and say, does that satisfy us or not? So business leader says, that's interesting that you can do that, but this is a little hard to consume. Do you have a better way to look at it? I say, sure. We can look at a table and look at it by date. And this is what those 50% increase in ad budget, what visit counts we're going to hit. So business leader says, well, I could go, let's try 40%, let's try 30%, let's try 60, let's try 35, 45. It could be an endless array of punches at me, and we could be here all day. But here's an opportunity to flip the script on him or her and impress and say, let's take a step back. What is your overall business objective? Business leaders, big, bad, and strong, says, I want to double website traffic in the next 2 weeks. I say, okay, that's a more interesting question. How do we tweak the levels of our different marketing channels to get to that overall objective or optimization? We're not leaving opportunity on the table. So I'm just going to hit the reset button here. And I'm going to make that adjustment. So from an approachability perspective, all I'm doing now is doing the exact same thing I did before. I'm just clicking on a different chart. This time, overall website visitation. Business leader said, I want to double it. So I say, okay, let's double it. You see it pops up. And then I just hit apply, and it runs. And what's going to happen here is all my contributing marketing channels that have been identified as important with respect to this 2-week prediction now optimize to the levels that I need to hit to get to that business objective. Boom! That's awesome. It's this visualization, and my business leader goes, what the heck is that spike? You see in the lower chart. That's a huge amount of investment that's going to paid search on a single day. Business leader says, no way, I'm not hedging my bets that hard on one day. We need to make an adjustment. Sure, again, inviting the business leader through the benefits of visualization to interact with me and add value to this. I say, okay, what are your constraints? Or what are your bounds? How do you want to frame that hedge? Business leader says, well, paid search. If I can get to my business objective and put nothing into paid search, I'm all right with that. And then we put an upper limit of how much he or she is willing to spend. And we just rerun. And you see those horizontal dotted lines that show those constraints. Now again, with the beauty of visualization, if we look at the focus on the middle chart, you see a spike in organic search from the original prediction. It happens right here. Again, I can come in and I can say, well, organic search, not an ad-centered channel. The way this is deviating, we need to make an adjustment there because that's not reality. Again, domain expertise, if I didn't understand how digital marketing works, I wouldn't be able to detect that. So we can make that adjustment, bring it down to a level we're okay with, and rerun with that new rule in place. So we're inserting both marketing business rules as well as analytics in conjunction with this digital media attribution question of interest. So we get to a point where we're happy. We've got information now that I can package up in a table, and the business leader says, okay, I don't really have any other questions to challenge you. How do we take action on this? Those of you that do analysis, make sure you can answer that question. Otherwise, what you've done was just like a side project. If you haven't thought through how you're going to take action, what was the point? In this case, I can deliver now this table that summarizes what levels we need to hit in the paid search channel to the campaigner or the digital marketing search specialist. If I know what my cost per click is, I know how to set my budgets based on historical patterns, I know approximately how to get to these levels. They've got targets they need to hit by date. I've just equipped them with the prescription. You'll notice at the bottom, if you're sitting in the front, there's transparency about what the algorithm is. Did I ever mention anything about the algorithm? Did it even matter? For those of you that like to talk about that stuff, a lot of times it doesn't even come up. As long as I can logically rationalize the story of the analysis to aid in the business problem you're trying to address. All right. I think I'm probably close to being out of time. For those of you that, like, man, that was a cool presentation, which is probably very few of you. There's a link at the bottom there if you want to rewatch it for some reason when you get the slides. And at this point, I would be happy to take any questions.